More now on the Adams case. The Justice Department officially moving to toss the New York City mayor's corruption case after a slew of prosecutors resigned in protest. Now the case will go before federal judge Dale Ho, who will have the final say on whether the case can be dropped. Joining me now is Chris Greenberg, former SDNY Criminal Division Deputy Chief, former federal prosecutor, and now an MSNBC legal analyst. Christy, good to see you as always. So we've seen a wave of resignations from federal prosecutors who just flat out refused to sign off on the filing to dismiss Adams' charges. NBC is reporting that Edward Sullivan, a senior litigation counsel, decided to sign it to protect his colleagues. What do we know about the meeting with acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove that led to that decision?
So based on public reporting, he did not threaten to fire these public integrity prosecutors. But the threat really is implicit, because when the Eric Adams prosecutors in SDNY said that they would not file that motion to dismiss, he placed them on leave and he said he was going to investigate them. So even if you don't say the threat outright, you're going to be fired unless somebody steps up to do this, it's pretty clear that that was the case. And so it seems as though this one prosecutor from that unit, Ed Sullivan, was the sacrificial lamb. The one thing I will say is this whole procedure of meeting with a bunch of prosecutors and telling them somebody needs to sign to dismiss a case is completely wrong. Anytime when I was a line prosecutor, someone would transfer me a new case, it was my responsibility to review the file, review what had happened, what the memos were, and then recommend to my supervisors the next steps forward. It was never a top-down directive, you need to do X. That's not what our oath is. That's not how we are supposed to behave as prosecutors. So I'm surprised they found anybody who was willing to sign off on this, even if it was to protect others from firing.
And then will there be a hearing over filing to end this case? And if so, how then does the DOJ defend this move in court?
Well, there should be a hearing. Judge Ho should look at what has happened. He has seen these memos, presumably. And when you have that many career prosecutors resigning rather than sign off, that is a signal to the judge that you need to have a hearing and you need to ask some really tough questions, specifically of Emil Bove, because Emil is the one who is very clear in the motion to dismiss that these were his judgment calls. So you need to ask him a lot of tough questions. And in particular, there is one factual dispute that it seems to me the judge really needs to get to the bottom of. You have Danielle Sassoon, who's the former SDNY U.S. attorney, who resigned because she said that there was an improper quid pro quo that was being offered from Adams' attorneys, that Adams would only help with immigration enforcement if the charges against him were dismissed. She said that that was made plain to her in communications, and it was made plain to her in a meeting with Emil Bove. Now, Bove and Adams' attorneys deny this.
Well,
so
you know what, to that point, hang on a second. Let's all take a listen to Trump border czar Tom Homan on CNN earlier this morning. It's relative to this. Take a listen.
It sounds like the DOJ dropped the case against Adams, and in exchange, he let you into Rikers. Is that what happened?
No, I think that's ridiculous. Me and Mayor Adams met a couple months ago. I think it was probably eight, 9 weeks ago we met, and we had the same discussion. And we talked about getting a presence in Rikers Island. We talked about how we can collaborate on public safety threats and finding the missing children that can't be found after they release their sponsors. And we had that a couple months ago.
So there's all these different denials or assertions of quid pro quo, and it's related to immigration and all these inquiries, right? Despite Danielle Sassoon alleging one in her resignation letter. What are your overall thoughts on this big picture?
Well, in response to what was just said, that he was having conversations with Mayor Adams over the past few weeks, that is in conjunction with these conversations that were happening with the Department of Justice about dropping his case, and Mayor Adams making a request through his attorneys to have a pardon. So these conversations with the border czar are not happening in isolation. And as Donald Trump would say, this is the art of the deal, right? They didn't just pardon Eric Adams, which is what they could have done and dropped the case entirely. They didn't just say, we want to dismiss the case outright. What they said is, we want to dismiss the case without prejudice, which means we can bring this case back. We can bring these charges back. Now, why would you do that? If you really thought that there were actions that were taken that threatened the integrity of the proceedings, you would just drop the case. But that's not what they did, because they wanted leverage over him to make him Donald Trump's puppet. There's no other explanation for why you would dismiss and allow the case to come back later.
Even though they will deny it. But to your point,